The bride was sent to the wrong ranch, but the little girl whispered, "God finally sent you to us." The shuttle drifted down through a pale orange sky, its engines humming softly as it crossed the wide plains of Red Mesa Colony. Below, the land stretched in endless waves of copper grass and rocky ridges. Two suns hung in the sky, one bright and gold, the other smaller and faint, casting a soft silver glow over the ranchlands. Clara Bennett sat quietly by the window, her hands folded in her lap. She had traveled millions of miles from Earth to begin a new life. The Colonial Settlement Bureau had matched her with a rancher on this frontier world. His name was listed as Daniel Harper of North Ridge Territory. According to the file, he owned one of the strongest ranches in the region. Stable, prosperous, respectable, it was supposed to be safe. After losing her parents in a transport accident 2 years earlier, Clara had decided she could not remain in the crowded cities of Earth. She wanted open sky, purpose, a place where she would not feel like a shadow in someone else's world. Marriage on the frontier was common. Hard land needed strong families. She had agreed. The shuttle's speaker chimed. Arrival at destination coordinates confirmed. Clara took a steady breath as the landing gear lowered. But when the shuttle doors opened, the first thing she noticed was silence. There was no welcoming group, no workers, no sign of a large, prosperous ranch. Instead, the homestead ahead looked weathered. The house was sturdy but old. The fencing along the fields showed signs of repair. A few grazing bio cattle lifted their heads as dust settled. This was not what she had seen in the file. A single rider approached from the far end of the pasture. He rode a hovermare slowly, cautiously, as if unsure what he was about to find. When he stopped a few steps away, Clara stepped down from the shuttle ramp. The man removed his hat. His face was strong but tired. His clothes were clean but worn from work. His eyes held confusion more than welcome. "Ma'am," he said carefully, "I think there's been a mistake." Clara blinked. "This is North Ridge Territory Ranch, correct?" He shook his head once. "This is Red Mesa Ranch, Ethan Cole." The name struck her like a sudden wind. "That can't be right," she whispered. The shuttle pilot stepped out, checking coordinates on his wrist panel, his brow furrowed. "Coordinates match this property," he said. "Bride transport order confirmed." Ethan stiffened. "I never filed for a bride." Silence stretched between them. Clara felt her stomach drop. "My contract states Daniel Harper of North Ridge." The pilot checked again, then sighed. "There's been a data reroute in the system. I can file correction. Next available shuttle for reassignment arrives in 5 days." 5 days, the words echoed in Clara's mind. The shuttle pilot gave an apologetic nod. "Regulations require temporary placement at current coordinates until correction." He returned to his seat. Within minutes, the shuttle lifted back into the sky, leaving Clara standing on unfamiliar ground with a man who had not asked for her arrival. Dust swirled gently around her boots. Ethan looked at her for a long moment, not angry, just unsure. "You can stay in the guest room," he said finally. 5 days isn't long." Clara swallowed her embarrassment and nodded. "Thank you." He turned and led the way toward the house. As they walked, she studied the ranch. The soil looked dry in some sections. The irrigation pipes near the barn seemed patched. The bio cattle, large creatures engineered for frontier climates, were fewer than she expected for land this size. This ranch was struggling. Inside, the house felt simple but warm. Wooden walls, old earth photographs. A kitchen table with 2 chairs instead of 4. Ethan gestured toward the hallway. "Guest room S at the end, bathrooms shared." His voice was polite but distant. Clara set her small luggage case down and thanked him again. When he stepped outside, she allowed herself a slow breath. She had imagined nervous excitement meeting her future husband. Instead, she felt like a delivery that had gone to the wrong address. She unpacked quietly. A soft knock came at the door. Clara turned. A little girl stood in the doorway. She could not have been more than 7 years old, dark hair braided neatly, big thoughtful eyes that seemed older than her age. "Hi," the child said softly. "Hello," Clara replied gently. "I'm Clara." "I'm Lily." There was no fear in Lily's expression, only curiosity. "Are you staying?" Lily asked. Clara hesitated. "Only for a few days. There was a mistake." Lily stepped inside, closing the door behind her like she was guarding a secret. She looked up at Clara and whispered very softly, "God finally sent you to us." Clara felt her chest tighten. "That's very kind of you," she said carefully, "but I think I was meant for somewhere else." Lily shook her head slightly. Daddy's been sad a long time. Clara didn't know what to say. From outside, she heard the distant hum of a malfunctioning perimeter alarm. Lily noticed her listening. That one's been broken, she said. Daddy fixes things, but they break again. Clara walked to the window and looked toward the outer fence. A red warning light blinked weakly against the wide horizon. Has it been hard here? Clara asked gently. Lily nodded once. Mama used to help. Clara understood then. The empty chairs at the table, the tired look in Ethan's eyes. This ranch wasn't simply old. It had lost something. That evening, Clara joined them for dinner. Ethan had cooked simple stew. Conversation was quiet at first. Lily tried to fill the silence by talking about the glowing creek near the south ridge and the way the smaller sun sometimes made the grass shine silver at night. Clara listened carefully. Ethan mostly listened too. After dinner, a strong wind began to rise outside. The plains had a way of changing mood quickly. Clara stepped onto the porch to watch the sky darken into shades of deep orange and purple. Ethan joined her. "I'm sorry about the mix-up," he said, not looking at her. "I didn't mean for you to end up here." "I know," she replied softly. He rubbed the back of his neck. "This ranch isn't what it used to be." Clara didn't ask questions. She could see that much. The wind picked up stronger. One of the fence posts creaked loudly. "Storm coming?" she asked. "Maybe," he said. "Or something riding the wind?" She glanced at him. "Out here," he continued, "not all storms are natural." A distant flicker moved along the horizon, metal glinting in the fading light. Clara felt a small chill. Ethan noticed too. His posture shifted immediately. Alert. Protective, he stepped off the porch. "Stay inside." But Clara didn't move. In the far distance, something rolled across the plains, shapes moving low to the ground, carried by the wind. Rogue machines, old mining drones left over from early colony days. When strong winds hit, they sometimes drifted across ranch land, tearing through fencing and damaging livestock. The perimeter alarm sparked again, then went dark. Ethan grabbed a tool rifle from beside the door and mounted his hovermare. Clara watched as he rode out alone toward the failing fence line. Lily appeared beside her, small hand gripping the doorframe. "Daddy always goes alone," she whispered. Clara's eyes stayed fixed on the horizon. The wind howled louder. And for the first time since arriving, Clara felt something shift inside her. Maybe this wasn't where she was meant to be, but maybe she hadn't arrived by accident either. Under twin fading suns, with dust rising and machines moving in the distance, the quiet ranch that was never meant to receive her stood on the edge of something bigger than a paperwork mistake. And Clara Bennett, who thought she would stay only 5 days, felt her heart begin to question everything she believed about destiny. The wind grew stronger as Ethan rode toward the outer fence line, his silhouette fading into the dusty horizon. Clara stood on the porch, watching until he became a small dark shape against the copper plains. The sky deepened into shades of orange and violet as the smaller sun slipped lower, casting long shadows across the ranch. Inside the house, Lily stayed close to Clara. The little girl's quiet presence carried both hope and worry. "Does he always go alone?" Clara asked gently. Lily nodded. "Daddy says it's safer that way." Clara looked back toward the horizon again. She could barely see flashes of movement where the rogue machines rolled across the land. They moved like broken animals, driven only by old programming and drifting storms. The ranch suddenly felt very large and very vulnerable. A sharp crack echoed from the distance. Clara flinched. "That's just the sonic rifle," Lily said softly. "It scares them away sometimes." Clara hesitated. Part of her wanted to stay inside to remember that she was only a temporary guest. 5 days, she reminded herself, this was not her responsibility. But another part of her refused to stand still. She stepped toward the barn, following the faint memory of where she had seen tools earlier. The doors creaked open, revealing shelves filled with equipment, repair kits, spare wires, old farming drones waiting to be fixed. She noticed a control panel mounted near the wall, its screen flickering weakly. The perimeter system. Clara walked closer, brushing dust away from the controls. She studied the interface carefully. Her mother had been an environmental engineer, and Clara had grown up helping with small technical work. Though this system was older, the logic felt familiar. The outer sensors had lost alignment. The sonic deterrent grid had partially shut down. She glanced back toward the house, unsure if she should interfere. Ethan had not asked for her help, but she remembered Lily's whisper. God finally sent you to us. Clara took a slow breath and began working. Her fingers moved carefully across the controls, running diagnostics, rerouting energy flow from inactive sections toward the damaged fence line. The system resisted at first, warning of outdated firmware, but she bypassed the block with a manual override. Outside, a low humming sound spread across the plains as the sonic grid activated. A faint pulse rippled through the air. In the distance, several rogue machines shifted direction, turning away from the ranch. Clara exhaled slowly. Moments later, Ethan returned, riding fast toward the barn. He stopped sharply when he noticed the humming grid. He dismounted and walked inside, eyes moving from the control panel to Clara. "You fixed it?" he asked, surprise clear in his voice. "Only temporary," she said. "The alignment was off. I just rerouted power." He stared at the screen again, then nodded once. "Thank you." It was the first time he had said those words to her. They worked together through the evening, reinforcing the fence line and checking for damage. The storm passed without major loss, leaving only scattered debris across the fields. Back at the house, Lily ran to Ethan and hugged him tightly. He smiled faintly, brushing dust from her hair. Clara watched quietly from the doorway. Something in the atmosphere felt different now. Less tense, less distant. Dinner that night felt warmer. Ethan spoke more than before, asking Clara about Earth, about the cities and oceans he had only seen in old recordings. She answered simply, describing green forests and crowded streets, but also the loneliness she had felt there. "I thought the frontier would feel more honest," she said softly. Ethan nodded slowly. "It usually is." The next morning, Clara woke early and stepped outside. The plains looked peaceful again, washed clean by the storm. Two suns rose together, painting the land with golden light. She walked toward the irrigation system near the fields. Yesterday, she had noticed uneven water flow. After checking the pipes, she realized the filtration unit needed recalibration. Without thinking too much, she adjusted the settings, balancing pressure across the network. Water flowed more evenly almost immediately. When Ethan arrived, he paused in surprise. "That's been off for months," he said. "It wasn't difficult," Clara replied with a small smile. He studied her quietly, as if trying to understand something new. Later that day, Lily showed Clara the glowing creek beyond the ridge. Strange blue plants grew along its banks, shining faintly even under daylight. The little girl laughed more than before, skipping over rocks and talking about how her mother used to bring her there. Clara listened carefully. "She said this place was magic," Lily added. Clara looked around at the endless sky, the alien beauty of the land, and felt a strange warmth in her chest. Maybe magic didn't always look perfect. By the third day, Clara felt less like a visitor and more like someone who belonged to the daily rhythm of the ranch. She helped organize supply inventory, repaired a damaged drone, and even joined Ethan during livestock checks. They spoke more easily now. Ethan shared stories about building the ranch with his late wife, about how storms had grown harsher over the years, about pressure from nearby ranch syndicates trying to buy his land. "They say it's just business," he said quietly, "but it doesn't feel that simple." Clara sensed there was more he wasn't saying. That evening, a message arrived from the Colonial Settlement Bureau. "Shuttle correction confirmed. Arrival in 48 hours." Clara read the message twice. Her chest tightened unexpectedly. She should feel relieved. This had always been temporary. She would go to the ranch she was meant for, start the life she had agreed to. Yet as she watched Lily chasing fireflies in the yard and Ethan repairing a broken fence under the fading sunlight, something inside her resisted the idea of leaving. That night, strong winds returned, though not as fierce as before. Clara stepped onto the porch again, wrapping her arms around herself as she watched the horizon. Ethan joined her quietly. "You've helped more in 3 days than anyone in months," he said. She looked at him, unsure how to respond. "I didn't expect any of this," he continued. "Neither did I," she admitted. They stood in silence, watching the stars appear one by one. "Your shuttle comes soon," he said finally. "Yes." He nodded, though his expression remained unreadable. From inside the house, Lily's voice called softly for Clara. She turned back, feeling torn between two worlds. The plains stretched endlessly beyond the fence line, whispering with possibility and uncertainty. Clara had arrived by mistake, but the ranch no longer felt like the wrong place. And as the wind carried distant sounds across the land, She sensed that the coming days would bring choices far more difficult than simply boarding a shuttle and leaving everything behind. Morning arrived slowly over Red Mesa Ranch. The twin suns rose behind thin clouds, turning the sky into shades of soft gold and pale pink. Clara stood outside near the fence line, watching the fields stretch toward the horizon. The air felt calm, but something deep inside her felt restless. The bureau message from last night stayed in her thoughts. 48 hours until departure. She told herself that leaving was simple. She had agreed to a different life, a different ranch, a different future. This place had never been meant for her. Yet every small sound around her felt familiar now, the distant hum of irrigation pumps, the quiet movement of bio-cattle grazing, the faint laughter of Lily inside the house. She took a slow breath. Behind her, Ethan approached, carrying a toolbox. He gave her a small nod. "Morning, morning," she replied. They worked side by side repairing a loose section of fencing. The silence between them was no longer uncomfortable. It felt steady, like two people learning to understand each other without needing many words. After a while, Clara spoke. "You mentioned yesterday that nearby ranch syndicates wanted your land." Ethan's hands paused briefly. "Yeah. Why?" He hesitated, as if deciding how much to say. "This area wasn't valuable when we first settled. Hard soil, strong storms, most people didn't want it." "But something changed?" He nodded slowly. "A survey team came through months ago, said there might be rare minerals underground. Nothing confirmed, but after that, offers started coming." Clara understood immediately. "They want you to sell." "They want control," he said quietly. She studied his expression. There was no anger, only exhaustion. Later that afternoon, the sound of approaching engines broke the peaceful rhythm of the ranch. Clara looked up to see two sleek hover vehicles descending toward the main yard. They were polished and modern, very different from the worn equipment of Red Mesa. Ethan's posture stiffened. "Stay close," he said. Three figures stepped out of the vehicles, dressed in clean frontier suits. Their smiles were polite but cold. The tallest man introduced himself. "Caleb Rourke, representing Ridgeback Syndicate." Clara felt a small chill. Rourke's eyes briefly scanned her, then returned to Ethan. "We came to check on your situation. We heard about unexpected changes." Ethan crossed his arms. "My answer hasn't changed." Rourke smiled lightly. "Every rancher has a price eventually." "I don't." The man's smile faded slightly. "You're struggling, supply delays, equipment failures, raising a child alone. We're offering stability." Clara noticed how carefully he chose his words. "I'm not selling," Ethan said firmly. Rourke's gaze shifted toward Clara again. "And your guest, a new bride arriving unexpectedly. Life brings surprises, doesn't it?" Clara felt uncomfortable under his attention. After a few more polite but tense exchanges, the visitors left, their hover vehicles lifting away in a swirl of dust. Lily ran out from the house as soon as they disappeared. "I don't like those people," she said. Ethan knelt beside her. "You don't have to." Clara watched silently, her thoughts racing. Something about the visit felt wrong, not just business pressure, but calculation. That evening, curiosity pushed her to review her contract files again. Using the ranch terminal, she accessed the bureau system. Her original destination still showed Northridge territory, but when she opened the routing history, she noticed something strange. The coordinates had been altered shortly before her departure. A manual override. Clara frowned. Someone had changed the destination after approval. Her heart began to beat faster. Was it truly a random mistake? She called Ethan over and showed him the data. His jaw tightened. "You think someone sent you here on purpose?" "I don't know," she admitted. "But this doesn't look accidental." He stared at the screen for a long moment, then looked toward the horizon where the syndicate vehicles had disappeared. "They've been trying to pressure me for months," he said quietly. "Maybe they thought a forced marriage situation would make me leave." The idea unsettled her. Instead of breaking the ranch, her arrival had strengthened it. Later that night, they sat outside under a sky filled with stars. The smaller sun had already set, leaving only the larger one glowing faintly at the edge of the world. Lily fell asleep with her head resting against Clara's shoulder. Ethan spoke softly. "I haven't seen her this happy since." He stopped, unable to finish. Clara understood. "You're doing fine," she said gently. He shook his head. "I'm surviving, that's different." Silence settled between them again. "Why did you choose the frontier?" he asked after a while. Clara thought carefully before answering. "Because I didn't want to feel lost anymore. I wanted to build something real." He nodded slowly. The next day brought new tension. The perimeter sensors detected movement near the outer ridge. Ethan prepared to investigate, but this time Clara insisted on helping. She rode beside him on a second hover mount, the wind rushing past as they crossed the open plains. They found damaged fencing again, but the pattern looked deliberate, not storm damage. Someone had tampered with it. Clara exchanged a worried glance with Ethan. "They're trying to make it harder for you to stay," she said. He didn't disagree. They repaired the damage quickly and returned home before nightfall. As sunset approached, the Bureau transmitted a final confirmation message: shuttle arriving tomorrow morning. Clara read the message slowly. Tomorrow, the word felt heavy. That evening, Lily followed her quietly into the guest room. "You're leaving," she said softly. Clara knelt to meet her eyes. "I'm supposed to?" Lily shook her head, tears shining in her eyes. "You make Daddy smile again." Clara felt her heart ache. Outside, Ethan stood alone on the porch, staring across the dark plains. Clara joined him after Lily fell asleep. "Everything feels different now," she said quietly. He nodded. "It does." Neither spoke for a long time. The wind moved gently through the fields, carrying the scent of earth and distant rain. Tomorrow would bring the shuttle. Tomorrow would bring a choice. And as Clara looked at the ranch, the worn house, the wide sky, the man who had learned to trust her, and the little girl who had whispered hope into her heart, she realized that leaving might not be as simple as she once believed. Morning came slowly, like the world itself was. Waiting. The sky above Red Mesa Ranch turned soft gold as the twin suns rose together. Clara stood outside near the porch, her hands resting lightly against the wooden railing. The air felt calm, but inside her, thoughts moved like a quiet storm. Today the shuttle would arrive. She had barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw different futures. One where she left and began a new life exactly as planned, and another where she stayed on this struggling ranch that had never been meant for her but somehow felt more real than anything else. Behind her, the screen door opened. Ethan stepped out carrying 2 cups of warm tea. He handed one to her without speaking. "Thank you," she said softly. They stood side by side, watching the endless plains. "I repaired the north fence this morning," he said after a while. "It should hold through the next storm," she nodded. "You always prepare for the worst." "That's the frontier," he replied. Silence followed, but it felt full rather than empty. Clara wanted to say something important, but the words felt heavy and difficult to shape. Inside the house, Lily's laughter suddenly echoed as she chased a small floating toy drone across the floor. The sound made Clara smile without thinking. Ethan noticed. "She hasn't laughed like that in a long time," he said quietly. Clara looked down at her cup. "She's strong." "So are you," the words surprised her. Before she could respond, a distant hum reached their ears. They both turned toward the sky. The Bureau shuttle appeared as a small silver shape descending through the clouds. It felt too fast, too soon. Lily ran outside as the shuttle lowered into the yard, dust swirling around its landing gear. She stopped near Clara, holding her hand tightly. "Do you have to go?" she whispered. Clara's heart tightened. "I don't know yet." The shuttle doors opened. A uniformed officer stepped down, checking a digital tablet. "Clara Bennett?" he asked. "Yes," she replied. "We apologize for the earlier routing error. Your correct destination is ready to receive you. Transport window is now." He spoke politely, professionally, as if this were a simple correction. Clara glanced at Ethan. He stood a few steps away, arms crossed loosely. His expression was calm, but she could see tension behind his eyes. He would not ask her to stay. That was not the kind of man he was. "Your luggage?" the officer asked. She hesitated. Everything felt quiet suddenly, the wind, the sounds of the ranch, even her own breathing. She remembered her first day here, standing alone and embarrassed after realizing she had arrived at the wrong place. She remembered Lily's soft whisper, the broken fence, the repaired irrigation system, nights under the stars, the way Ethan slowly began to trust her. This place had changed her. The officer checked his watch. "We need to depart soon." Clara stepped forward toward the shuttle. Lily's hand tightened around hers. 1 step, 2 steps. She paused at the base of the ramp. Her reflection appeared faintly in the metal surface, a woman who had come to the frontier searching for purpose. Was she walking toward it or away from it? She turned back slowly. Ethan watched her without speaking. Lily's eyes were wide with hope. Clara felt clarity settle inside her like sunlight breaking through clouds. "I want to request a reassignment," she said suddenly. The officer blinked. "I'm sorry." I want to stay here, she continued, her voice steady. At Red Mesa Ranch. The officer checked his tablet again. Your original contract. I understand, she said gently. But circumstances changed. I believe my placement here is valid. I'm requesting an official update. He hesitated, then nodded slowly. I can submit the request. Approval may take time. That's all right, she replied. She stepped away from the shuttle ramp and returned to stand beside Ethan and Lily. Lily hugged her immediately. Ethan looked at her, surprise and something deeper in his expression. Are you sure? Clara met his gaze. Yes. For the first time since she arrived, she felt completely certain. The officer sent the request and waited for confirmation. Minutes passed quietly until a soft chime sounded from his device. Request approved, he announced. Contract reassigned to Red Mesa Ranch. Relief washed through Clara. The shuttle lifted back into the sky without her. Dust settled slowly across the yard as silence returned. Lily laughed and spun in circles, unable to hide her happiness. Ethan looked toward Clara, still almost disbelieving. You chose this place. I chose where I feel needed, she said softly. The following days felt different. Supply shipments resumed after Clara sent evidence of syndicate interference to the Bureau. Investigations began, and Ridgeback representatives stopped appearing near the ranch. Repairs moved forward quickly. Together, Clara and Ethan redesigned irrigation systems, reinforced fences, and expanded grazing areas. But the biggest change was not in the land. It was in the house. Laughter became common. Meals felt warmer. Even the quiet evenings carried a sense of peace instead of loneliness. One evening, as twin sunsets painted the sky in shades of gold and deep red, Clara stood beside Ethan on the porch. You know, he said slowly, I spent a long time believing I had to do everything alone. She looked at him gently. You don't anymore. He smiled, not a small polite smile, but a real one that reached his eyes. Lily ran toward them, holding a glowing flower she had picked near the creek. She handed it to Clara proudly. For you, she said. Clara accepted it carefully. The wind moved softly across the plains, carrying the promise of new seasons ahead. Sometimes life didn't follow plans. Sometimes the wrong path led exactly where someone was meant to be. And as Clara looked across the wide frontier, at the ranch that was no longer a mistake, at the man and child who had become her family, she knew that destiny had not sent her to the wrong place at all. It had simply taken a different road to bring her home.